Hello, welcome to That VidBlaster Guy. I'm Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster Guy. You probably shot that quick screen change at the last minute. Oh my goodness. I was playing around with some things prior to the show and forgot to get them back where they were supposed to be. And that's funny because it was all macros. And fortunately, I had a macro that allowed me to pop that backdrop off really quickly and put on this lower third really quickly. I mean, just all with the punch of a button. So it's going to be a lot of fun as we explore macros on today's show. In fact, we covered that a couple of weeks ago, and we'll review a little bit, but then we're going to go a little deeper into it. So it'll be kind of more of a little educational session than a chat session. Couple quick news pieces though before we go into that. Just wanted to let you know that, and I don't know if you can copy all of this down, but this is a thread in the VidBlaster forum that talks about rewriting VidBlaster for the Mac. And so if you have some interest in that, you can go here to this particular thread, forum.vidblaster.com, thread.php $T equals 4521, and you can get more information about that. And I'll put a link in the show notes. Let me make a note. We'll make a link in the YouTube show notes so that you can go directly to that, because it's gonna be cool. VidBlaster on Mac. I mean, that's been one of the biggest criticisms of VidBlaster over the years, is that it was PC only, and that it didn't enjoy the power of the Mac and the ease of use of the Mac, and the fact that there's a pretty large Mac fan base that is involved in all things video. And so VidBlaster certainly wants to be a part of that, and we're delighted to see that Mike Versteeg has gone that direction. I've been working behind the scenes on some projects here in the studio, and some of which I can begin to share with you that are to the point, some that are still need to stay under wraps, but they're going to be pretty cool and fun as they come out from under wraps. So we'll talk about those a little more as we have time. As we have the last couple of weeks, this is going to be sort of a split segment show today. We'll have this show that'll be posted today, Wednesday, right after the show is recorded, and it'll be posted on our YouTube channel. And then it'll be followed by a second segment of the show that's our new show offering called Streaming Idiots. At least that's the alpha name. We'll see if that name sticks. And that will be recorded live after this show and broadcast live, but it'll be uploaded to YouTube and allowed, I think, what is today, Wednesday? It'll probably be Friday when we'll pull the plug on that one and let it go. See, would love to have your feedback. I actually love to have your feedback on both shows. For now, you can contact me. Full disclosure, I am a VidBlaster reseller, so I do make a commission on any purchase of VidBlaster through my store, which is at our website, thatvidblasterguy.com. And I also build custom PCs for folks that need PCs that are designed for broadcasting. We're working on a really fun project right now with a video company and a racetrack up in Michigan with a couple of PCs and 8 camera inputs, instant replay, graphics, all that stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll keep you apprised of that project as it moves along. The mantra of our show has always been one guy, one PC, one awesome broadcast, and it's caused me a lot of debate lately, as especially now that I'm taking on a project that involves more than one PC. Am I being not true to myself by doing this? But it was really the only way to, because the instant replay process, if it's going to be done right, it really needs a dedicated operator to do that. And so there would be a distance to VidBlaster to run one PC, and then there would be another operator that would be doing the switching between the live cameras and the graphics and videos and then instant replay. And that person would be licensed to operate that PC. So two individual licenses. And it was kind of interesting because, VidBlaster has a unique licensing format where individuals are licensed to use the program. They can put it on as many PCs as they want, but they're the only one that can use it, kind of like a driver's license in the United States. And then there's another license, which is one that we're a little bit more familiar with, called a desktop license, where the software can be operated by anybody, but it's limited to just one PC. The desktop license is approximately 3 times the price of the individual license. So it'll be interesting to see. And I've talked with my guys about is on the individual, and if not, then we're going to have to upgrade the license to a desktop license if other people become involved. So just a little sidetrack there. If you have an older version 1 or version 2 of VidBlaster, and would like to update to version 3, I do recommend it. At first, I was a little hesitant because I didn't feel like version 3 had all the power of version 2. The playlist module was missing, and that's since been replaced by the playout controller, which is coming along nicely. It's not finished yet, but it's definitely, I think it's every bit as powerful as the old playlist, and the potential for the future on it is just huge. So there's a great big upside, I think, to version 3. And I like some of the changes in the camera module that makes it use less CPU resources. The same thing for the player module, and some other modules have been sort of redesigned, probably made more efficient. And so that's a lot of fun and great to see. It's kind of interesting as we look forward into the future and how software becomes more and more powerful, requires more and more hardware resources. Hardware becomes more and more powerful. Is that in response to software, or is, everybody has their own opinion about that. So it will be interesting to see exactly how it falls out. But coming up later this year, you've probably already heard that Intel will be releasing a new 6-core i7 processor that will be priced in the 400s, which is beginning to be within the reach of a lot of folks. So we're going to keep our eye on that, and that certainly will help any kind of program like VidBlaster that uses a lot of CPU resources. So with that kind of introduction, let's dive into the macro portion of the show. And we want to welcome all of you that are watching live and are in the chat room. If you're watching and not in chat, we'd love to have you come join the chat, because our demonstration today will be interactive. That is, if what I'm talking is Greek and all you speak is Spanish, then we can have an opportunity to translate. My Greek to Spanish is pretty good. So macros are a great way. I mean, if you remember macros from the old spreadsheets when they first came out, where you could basically take a function key and it would do all sorts of things in your spreadsheet, the same thing is true in VidBlaster. I remember, when I discovered macros back in the MS-DOS days, and a macro could do all sorts of formatting, and basically any keystroke that you could record, or any command that was in the program, you could put into a macro. And it sure made life a whole lot easier for doing especially repetitive tasks. Well, here in VidBlaster, we've got macros, and they are part of the API. Now, you've got to have the studio or the broadcast version in order to take advantage of this. So if you're a home license owner or a pro license owner, I apologize for spending so much time on this, but this is one of the great powerful features of VidBlaster, and you need to save up your shekels and upgrade to this. If you haven't purchased VidBlaster, you don't have a license, you can download the trial edition, which is equivalent to the studio edition, and you can see the macro functions and play around with them. It's a fully functional version, and I think it just has a watermark here. Whoops, in the top right-hand corner, and then one in the bottom left-hand corner. But other than that, it's a fully functional edition of the studio edition. Let's see, where was I going with that? And yeah, you can download that from the VidBlaster forum. That's forum.vidblaster.com. If you are a licensed owner of VidBlaster and you've got it on your PC already, you're not going to be able to use the trial version. But if you can get your hands on a second PC that doesn't already have the license on it, you can download the trial there and have a look at it and see. But today I'm using the broadcast version, and my screen, I'm going to give you a quick shot of my screen. My screen looks something like that. Obviously, this is my program window right here, program module, and it shows infinity here up at the top because it shows itself over and over and over again. But you can get the general idea. I've got a diagnostics module going on down here in the bottom right corner. Here in the top right-hand corner, I've got the streamer, the output module that's sending output over to Wirecast, and then an audio player. Right here below the program module, I've got my webcam, which is basically this shot right here, pure, plain, and simple. And then next to that camera, I've got a screen capture that we'll look at in just a second. And then next to that, I've got basically my webcam, but with a backdrop inserted into it in an effect module. It looks like that. And let's go back to that shot. I just wanted to kind of orient you to what's going on here so that you can have an idea as we talk about some of these modules in just a minute, or talk about some of the macros in just a minute. I'll be referring to some of these modules that we've looked at here. This is a recorder module here. This is a player module for my closing credits. This is the opening credits that Martin Kay made for me, and that plays through this effects module right here. We'll cover that in another show. This camera right here is the screen capture that we're looking at. Here in the bottom left-hand corner, I've got two still images. One is this background. One is this background. And then next to it, I've got a player that is basically this background, and then I can click the play button, and you can see how it kind of gives the image of an active background. And that's those 1, 2, and 3 right here. And then stringing across right here, I've got an overlay. So that would be this overlay, this overlay, this overlay, this overlay, and that overlay that we showed at the very beginning of the show. Fortunately, I was able to take that, just do a cut and paste and pop it right in. It took about 6 seconds. It was great to be able to let that go in as quickly and easily as it could. Let's see, right here at the bottom is the switching bar, and that, I believe that is available in the Pro version and up. As you can see, camera 3 is red, so that's our program, and then player 4 is green. That's our preview. We're not actually using a preview today, but it does show up preview on the switching module. Just off screen is a macro window, and that looks like this. And that's where the macros are quote unquote stored. And as you can see in that window, we've got a file number coming down the left side, or excuse me, a macro number coming down the left side, and then a description, which is text that you and I can type in that tells what the macro is or does or whatever, however we want to call it. And then this third column right here, commands, is the actual macro text, and so we'll come back to that in just a second. And then in the far right-hand column, column number 4, is the shortcut. That is, what series of keystrokes do we have to use in order to execute that macro. You notice that this one down here at the bottom is highlighted in blue. It doesn't have a description. It was one I was playing with in pre-show. And if I click any one of these, they become highlighted in blue. I can double-click them, and now they are editable. Let's do that again. We'll pick one. It's in blue at first. I can click a second time, and it's all painted. So if I hit the delete key right now, it would all go away. Or I can click again, and now I can use my cursor or my mouse and click through and edit any part of this. Or, what's a little easier, if I make it turn that color blue and right-click it, it brings up a quick little window here, and I have the choice to editor or execute. Well, if I choose editor, it pops up a little editing window that basically has all the text of my macro in it, and I can just edit it here, click the OK button, and it'll go back and it'll insert the new text here. Oh, and I'm being corrected in the chat room that the VidBlaster Pro version does not include the switcher. My bad. Must be Studio and above. So that's the general orientation of the macro window, and this actually is sitting off to the side of my VidBlaster window on a monitor to my left. I'm running a 3-monitor system, and so this center monitor looks like this, and I unfortunately don't have screen capture set up on the other 2 monitors, but you'll have to just trust me that they are there. So what I'd like to do is let me show you first off some of the macros that I'm working with. It's not anything fancy, but it doesn't take fancy to be helpful. As at the very beginning of the show, I realized I was in the wrong place. I had the wrong scene. I was in Hawaii, and needed to be here in Alabama. So fortunately, with the press of a button, I could get there. And actually, let me try to recreate that for you and tell you this is where I was, and that's going to be in our second segment today. That'll be the background that I'm using and the lower. This is where I want it to be. So I can use a macro to change the effect background and change the lower third, switch to whatever shot I want that looks like this. And I want to go back to that VidBlaster guy shot. I can just hit F4 and it will do all that. And in fact, let's go ahead and take a look at F4 and we'll see how that one works. Now, I am not well organized in this today. F4 is not macro number 4. It happens to be macro number 5, so you'll have to bear with me on that. And I've titled it VBG, that's VB guy, main cam on. So I'm going to come over here and click it once so that it turns blue like that. And then I'm going to turn the editor on. And let me pull the editor up a little bit so that you can see it better. And there are 4 lines in this macro. Now, you notice line 1 starts with an asterisk, starts with a star. And that's because I've been playing with that command and it's not working the way I think it should. So we're going to skip it for just a second and we'll go to the second line. Now the macros use the API, and the API command that is used most often, at least by me, is API write. That's API WRITE. Now you can go to the VidBlaster help menu, that's F1 in VidBlaster, and then click on, let's see, what is it? I think it's called TP server. Let's see, I've got it right here. TCP server, sure. There you go. Boy, that makes no sense. VidBlaster is such an intuitive program, and to be to go into the help menu, and when you're looking for API, and API is not one of your choices, and macros are not one of your choices. We might want to put in a feature request on that one for the help in VidBlaster. But if you go to TCP server, one of your choices will be API. And under API, there will be about 20 different pages of text about the API and about macros. So that will be kind of funny. Or actually, it's kind of funny the way it works out and weird because I'm getting off track. Let's go back to the editor. We'll pull the editor in. And so you see I've got API write is my command. And in this first one, I'm wanting to work with the effect module number 4. So effect module number 4 is essentially a chroma key effect that takes camera 1, which is my webcam with the green screen, and combines it with still store, which is the VidBlaster guy background. And so I'm essentially telling VidBlaster, take effect 4, make its source 2, which is the second source, the module named still store 2. And you notice that in here, source 2 is source with the word 2, the number 2 after it, but no space between the 1 and the 2, because in this particular case, in the effect module, there are 4 sources. Each source is numbered source 1, source 2, source 3, source 4 without a space. This is the source in the effect module. Now, modules themselves, as you can see right here with still store 2, there is a space in there. As you can see here with effect 4, there's a space in there. So it's just a little formatting kind of thing that you want to make sure you get right. And the way the command structure works is we've got our command, which is API write. Then we have our module name, in this case, effect 4. And then we have some pins. In this case, it's source 2, so we're telling it which part of effect 4. And then we want to identify what goes in source 2, which is text, still store 2 in this particular case. So if we had that and we told, and we had a macro to do that, it wouldn't put anything in the program window because we haven't told it to. We've simply told it to modify what's in the effect module and change it from whatever it was to still store 2. So the effect module is, let's close that for just a second. The effect module 4 is this one right here. And it is combined with this camera as our source 1 and this background as our source 2. And so in the effect module, it ends up with this effect. Now, why would I do that? I would do that because I also have this background that I'd like ground, and I do that in a module that essentially does that automatically. We'll take the lower third out for just a second. So I can have, in this case, essentially today we're going to be doing 2 separate shows, both of them using VidBlaster, and I will be able to, at the touch of a button, change the graphics and the background from show number 1 to show number 2. Pretty easy stuff. So let's see. Let's go back to our screen cap. I've got, I think this is it right there. There we go. Yeah, the macro window. I've actually got a macro set up to do this, but let's go back to our VB guy main cam on macro and look at that some more. Okay, so we've got line 2 in this. Remember, line 1 is something that I've been working on. In fact, we can just take it out because it's not really doing anything right now. Okay, so there we go. API write effect 4, and in effect 4, find the source 2 and make source 2 now be still store 2. So that was the first command. The second command says API write, that is API, hey, pay attention, you're fixing to do something. Take effect 4, the one that we just used in the first command, and then this is what you do with it. You trans it, T-R-A-N-S, trans. And then the value for trans in this case is true. Now I think the help in VidBlaster is incorrect because it says you don't need the true value there for it to work, but you really do. I couldn't get it to work without it. So when we do this, when we say API effect 4 trans true, what we're telling it is, and let's go back to the module and we can look at it. We've got this module right here. Oops, let's take off that lower third. And let's set up a screen cap on that just for a second because I want you guys to be able to see really what we're doing. Yeah, there we go. So this is our effect module 4 right here. It's set for chroma key. Source 1 is camera 1. Source 2 for right now is player 4. Actually, we wanted it to be still store 2, so let's go ahead and change it manually to still store 2. And you see how it changed. And then you notice we've got 2 buttons here, cut and trans. Well, cut, when we press the cut button, it gives us an immediate bow, a cut to that. We'll go back, cut back to our effect module. And the trans button will give us a transition. So if I click it, it will transition into that. Let's go back to our screen cap. Allows us to set the transition. It can either be a hard cut, which is the same as a cut, a dissolve fast, dissolve medium, dissolve slow. I've picked dissolve medium just because, yeah, you got to pick something. So if I click the trans button right here, it will go from essentially this screen capture down here, camera number 3, to this module, effect number 4, with a medium dissolve. And that's it right there. So in the screen capture that we were looking at, in the editor that we were looking right here, we're saying API write, effect 4, transition, whatever the transition was set for in the effect module, make it so. It is true, make it so. So it will turn that on. Then the third line of this editor is the one that says, hang on a second, let me get back up here with everybody. There we go. The third line in this says API, okay, there's our command, API write, overlay 1 is our module, on and true. So we're turning on overlay module number 1 with this third command. So essentially what we get is, and we'll go to it right here. Whoops, let me close that window. There we go. So we get this trans right here, and then it overlays overlay number, what overlay was it? Overlay number 1, right there. So it will do all of that in one shot. It will take whatever is in the effect module, and it will change its background to still store 2, and then it will overlay this lower third. Now I've got a macro set up to just basically go take everything back to this. And so the macro that we were working with just a second ago was F4. I'm going to F4, and it will put in my background. It will put in my lower third, and then of course it'll include this camera shot. Let's do another one, and this one will be. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the one that does this. That's really pretty. It looks easy, but it's really a little bit more complicated here. So let's take a look at it. We'll go right there. Excuse me. And this is F5. So that's going to be this main cam green on. And there's the macro right there. We're going to put it in the editor so that we can look at it. And it's kind of interesting. It's only 2 lines. And we'll start with the second line because that's the easy line. That's AP write, switcher, program 1, on. So in this case, we've called the switcher into action, and we've told the switcher, hey, switcher, API write is going to want you to do something with whatever is in your program 1 setting, and we want you to turn it on. Well, program 1 happens to be on the switcher, happens to be camera 1. Let me get out of this, and we'll go back and we'll show you. Let me drag this up there so we can see. This is part of the switcher. I haven't shown you the whole switcher. Oops, there's the switcher. And make it a little bit to the right there so we can see, but there we go. Oops, other modules keep popping in. So it's program, and then here are our program numbers. 0 is black, 1 happens to be camera 1, 2 happens to be camera 2, 3 happens to be camera 3. 4 happens to be effect. Anyway, it goes on and on. You can see that camera 3 is in the program window right now, which is our screen capture. Camera 2 is in preview, but we're not using preview, so anyway. And camera 1 is program 1 in the switcher. So if I click right here, it gives us, if I go back to, what was it, camera 3? Yeah, camera 3 right there. It will send us back to that shot. So let me pull the switcher back out of the way, put it in its place. You can see the effect module that we were playing with just a second ago. And let's go back to the macros window. Oops, take that off. And I'll get to that in just a second. That's an interesting thing to have happen when you have an overlay that just sort of hangs around. When that overlay hangs around like that, you know, what are you going to do with it? Well, you have to tell it to turn off. And one of the ways to tell it to turn off is to tell it to turn off, or you could tell all the overlays to turn off, because you never know which overlay. See, I've got 2 overlays stacked on top of each other now. And if I go into something else now, I've got 3 overlays stacked. When I hit my green button, they all go away. Well, how does that happen? Well, let's go over here and see. Let's see. We'll go to that one. And that will allow us to go back to the editor. Unfortunately, you can't keep the editor open when you do anything else in VidBlaster, because it becomes the active window in VidBlaster. So you have to close it out by clicking OK or Cancel in order to do anything else in VidBlaster. But you know, typically you're not writing macros in the middle of a show anyway. So the line number 2 tells the switcher to take program number 1 spot and turn it on, and that was our webcam spot. But the top one right here is kind of interesting. It says API write macro 1 execute true. Well, that's kind of the same format that we've been using all along, with the API write command telling it the module name. In this case, there's not a module name, there's a macro. And so it's macro position number 1. And macro position number 1 happens to be this one right here, and that is described as all overlays off. Now again, I just typed that text. That's not a command. You can't type in all overlays off and it will work, because it won't. But this is the command over here. So this macro right here, which is macro number 7, which happens to be F5. I should have numbered them sequentially. That would be an easier way to keep it organized, but I didn't. Anyway, the macro under F5, which is macro number 7, says as its first command to execute macro number 1. So let's save this, click OK, and we'll go up to macro number 1, and we'll go into the editor. And remember, to get into the editor, I click once to turn it blue. If I click a second time, it turns the other blue, kind of like painting it if you're going to do a cut and paste. And then I can click it a third time and actually edit it right here in this line. Or I can click it so it's blue like that, right click, and that'll bring up the editor window. And now you can see I've got 5 or 6, well actually it's 7 lines of macro commands here. They're almost all the same. And again, I'm not well organized, so they're not in numerical order, but the basic format is API write overlay number whatever, fill in the blank, off true. And I think I've got 3, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. So basically it's overlays number 1 through 7 in command, in macro number 1, it turns off overlays 1 through 7. Well, I guess I do have 7 overlays on my desktop right now. So it turns them all off. So if I were to close this window, and F12 is my shortcut, and I were to hit F12, it turned off the macro that said macro window. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, again, if I'm in a situation where I'm switching shots from this shot to this shot to, let's see, that shot, for example, my lower thirds begin to stack up, and I don't want them to stack up. So I've got a quick and dirty F12 turns them all off, but I can also execute that macro from inside another macro. So I can say within that macro, first thing I want you to do is turn off anything that's on. In fact, turn off everything, whether it's on or off. In terms of overlays, I want you to turn all the overlays off because you're fixing to do something else, and we need this space right here to be blank. So turn off that overlay, whatever's in it, if it's a full page graphic, if it's just something I've typed in the bottom, like macro window, or whether it's an actual graphic that I've put in here like this lower third, all the overlays go off, whatever's in, and if nothing is in that overlay, there's nothing wrong with it. Dave is saying in the chat room that it's called nesting, and that's exactly what it is, and it's a really powerful way to do it. You can nest. I don't know how many deep you can nest, Dave. I haven't looked at that yet. I've just gone one deep for right now. But let's go back to this. We're going to go back to, and see, obviously we need to do that there. Okay, so we're going to go back and take a quick look at F12, which is our all macros off, all overlays off, API right, overlay 3, comma, off, comma, true. That's the format. And we'll get that out of the way. And that turns all of them off. Okay. Well, what I found out earlier today is, and let's see, let's pick out this one right here. This is macro number 6, which is executed by F7, which actually turns on this macro window and then puts that little overlay macro window below it. And you notice I've got the star here, so that basically says, hey, don't pay any attention to this macro. It's not in the right format. I just left it here as a note because I wanted to come back and talk about it. So this first line of this macro editor, the macro says AP right, get macro 1, execute it, true, turn off all overlays. Well, that's good, and that's how it should work. But you notice the third line in this macro is API right, overlay 5 on, true. So I want to turn on overlay. Can I turn that on while this is open? Nope. I guess I can. Let's see. Let's try again. There we go. I can turn it on. Overlay 5 is this macro window graphic at the bottom. But I guess you would call it a bug, and some people might call it a feature. But if I execute macro number 1, which is turn off all overlays, this overlay 5 line 3 in this macro will not function. So we'll go back here. We'll take out the star. We'll click OK, and let's just come back to my main shot right here. And if I go to F7, which should turn the macro window on and should turn the macro window overlay on, you notice there's no overlay. I have to actually click that overlay to make it come on. So we'll come back up. We'll edit this. We'll go to that first line. We put our star in. I think probably any character would do, but star is just a good one for me. So essentially we've said, hey, don't execute whatever this first line is. We'll go back to something else like that. And if we come back to our macro window, now macro window worked. But that's a good example. Here I am here. I want to come back to the macro window, but now I'm in a situation where I'm stacking overlays again because I can't use a macro to turn off all the overlays and then turn on this overlay. What I found out, and whether or not it should be so or not, doesn't really matter for the moment. And this is folks that do this kind of stuff all the time like to find these kinds of things because they're fun to play with. But if you don't do this, then this doesn't really matter. It's a minor point. But if you need to know how to do it, then it becomes more than a minor point. This is a macro, doesn't have a name yet. I just wrote it before the show, and we'll bring it up in the editor so you can see it. And it's a pretty simple macro. It says, API write, take macro number 1 and execute it. And then the second line it says, API write, take macro number 6 and execute it. Okay? So we'll close that. That's number 7. Now macro number 6 is the screen capture for this screen that we're looking at right now. So let's go back to another shot, and we're going to say, okay, macro F11 should now turn off all the overlays. In fact, let's see if we can't go ahead and stack some overlays on here. Yeah, there we go. We got a lot of overlays stacked. We want to turn off all the overlays, and then we want to go back to macro number 6, which is our screen capture, and put an overlay on because that's included in macro number 6. So it turns off everything. It puts in the macro window overlay in the bottom. And so we've solved the problem of how to turn off all the overlays and turn on an overlay with a camera. So I'm going to have to go back and rewrite all my macros. And what I'll probably do, let's see, let's go here. Oops, sorry about that. We need to turn those off. I'm going to go and take all of these macros, the guts of these macros, and put them down lower, and then put the macros that are basically executing macros up higher so that I can get to them and see them and edit them. It doesn't really matter. You've got, let's see, how many lines? I think there are 100 lines maybe in here. Scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Yeah, we get down to 100 lines of macros. And by the way, the page up command obviously does not work when you do that. One of the minor criticisms I have of VidBlaster is that the, kind of the Windows Explorer methodology of getting around using the home key and the end key and things like that doesn't always work exactly as it does in other software. Okay, well, let's see. That was kind of fun. We have definitely overrun our time here. Sorry about that. This has been a fun look at macros. I appreciate you popping in. If you're watching live, hang on a second. We're going to have a little intermission with popcorn, and then we'll go on to our second segment. I'm Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy. It's been a treat to bring this information to you today. If you'd like more information, check us out at thatvidblasterguy.com and watch live every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock in the UK for That VidBlaster Guy. And now if I've got it queued up correctly, you never know. Then we'll run out with these credits. See you later.